Hello friends, this is JB here. Now that I've sold my truck, it's time to travel, and this time I think I'm going to Utah in the USA. And you're probably wondering, why Utah? Have you even heard of Utah? Well, I guess it comes down to opportunities, I think. Some of you like stories, right? And as you know, on JB's Man Cave, I always like to keep it real, raw, and I'm going to share with you some true stories, a little bit more about myself and my background. I know some of you like to know about that. For those of you who don't, I know you could switch to another channel or keep on moving. But thanks for staying and listening, for those of you who like to listen. So Utah is a state in the western part of the United States. It's really a landlocked state. It's largely a desert, but it's also has a big Latter-day Saint population. And Latter-day Saint, or LDS, is short for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, a lot of you might know them as quote-unquote Mormons, but they don't like to use that term. They're rather, you refer to them as LDS or Latter-day Saints. Now, you may think, oh, wow, how did you even become involved with that? Well, actually, my parents, or the family in whole, is one of the pioneers of that church right here in Trinidad. And you may not know, but I actually wrote a book about it. That's right. The History of the Saints, I called it, and I even copyrighted it. Another person in Trinidad wrote a book encompassing some of the religious groups and actually plagiarized some of my information from that book, but I won't even go there. Anyway, Mormon missionaries, or let's say LDS missionaries, because we don't want to use the word Mormon, came to Trinidad via Venezuela at one time. This was in the early 70s, late 70s, I would say, somewhere around there. And my father saw them hitchhiking on the road. I think they were going back to the airport and heading back to Venezuela. My father gave them a ride, and that began the start of his interest in the church. So my father, as you may have heard from other videos, those of you who are my fans and watch all my videos, you would have known that he was a very influential man. He was an advertising manager in the local Guardian newspaper, and he had many connections. It seemed like everywhere he went, somebody knew him, and he could always get things done. Despite being such an influential man, he also had a drink problem, unfortunately, and he was also a proud man. And sometimes if someone told him something that he could not do, he would show just how much of an influence he had. No, and I'm not talking about mafia level stuff. So when my parents were baptized into the church, a couple missionary, which is older husband and wife, they tend to serve on missions as missionaries, came to Trinidad once. In meeting my father, I guess they saw that he had a drink problem and tried to counsel him about it, but he did not like that counsel. He did not accept it. And the very next day, that couple were on a plane back to Utah via immigration deporting them. That's the kind of influence my father had. Of course, that was a negative for the church. And with the church now starting to put their roots here, and with my father being one of the pioneering members, that became a very shocking event for the church. So the hierarchy of the church got involved, and this went all the way to, I believe, the presidency of the church, and even the 70 with Robert E. Wells. Some of you may know him. He got involved and wrote a specific letter to the church leadership here, as well as my father, inviting him to Utah with his family. So back in 1981, I believe it was, I was around maybe 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. I was very young, but not too young that I couldn't remember all that was going on. And at that time, we were told that we need to sell everything that we had, which we did, including the businesses that my mother had and my father's work at the Guardian, and move to Utah. And that was a big event in my life. I hadn't really traveled much other than to Tobago and stuff, so going to the States the first time, that was really interesting. And Utah was my first experience of the States. And while at Utah, we attended a ward called the Monument Park 8 Ward. That was in Foothill, Utah, and I recently looked up a map and I did not see that building there anymore. It used to be right next to the Beacon Heights Elementary School, which is still there today. Now in Utah, my father went to the University of Utah, which is right there in the Foothills area, and was treated for his addictions. Now Utah, if you don't know about it, is a very religious state. because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a big foothold there, the politics, the life, everything, even the culture is largely based on the religion of the church. And because of that, there isn't much of a nightlife. There will, and especially back then, there were no bars at all, and nothing to do with anything of vice or etc. So that was all very helpful for my father. On top of that, getting the treatment from the University of Utah helped him, and he became sober. It was the first time in my life I had seen my father sober for so long, and he was actually happy with himself for it, for achieving that, and for being sober for so long. Now, while there, on top of having a treatment, my father was also involved in creating the First Ward newsletter and things like that. They were also involved in a place called Welfare Square, which is in downtown Salt Lake City. And I went to school while they were doing that at the Beacon Heights Elementary. I think I was in the fourth or fifth grade, I can't remember. Somewhere around there. I had a lot of friends. I enjoyed my time there. It was a very different atmosphere of school compared to what I experienced in Trinidad. Now, all good things have to come to an end, right? And my parents were told after about almost 2 years that it was time to head back to the Caribbean. What a mistake that was. From the moment we hit the Caribbean, back in Trinidad, and the smell of rum hit the nose of my father, he was right back at it. And that even eventually led to my parents later splitting. They got divorced, and that was the end of that chapter. I still kept in the church, served a mission in England, and maintained my activity all those years. The next time I went to Utah was a couple of years after my mission in England, actually, and that was, I think, somewhere in the 1990s. Maybe midnight. No, I think it was maybe 1997, 98, somewhere there. I went back to Utah. I wanted to meet some of my old missionary companions, my mission president, see where I used to go to school at Beacon Heights, and I was able to do that as well as meet some of the friends of my parents who took me around. And I have to say, my impressions of Utah at that time, it changed a bit because I saw Utah becoming more diverse. Everything looked similar, I guess, but more populated. The roads were still big, the infrastructure was still great, but there were a lot of diversity of people. And then I left and I came back to Trinidad. Now, decades later, here I'm going back to Utah, and what will I find? Is it still going to be welcoming? Is it still going to have the diversity growing? From what I'm gathering online, there's a lot of movement to liberalize the state, but how liberal, I don't know. I have a feeling that church members may be a bit more grounded than that. Let me know your thoughts. I'm heading to Utah. Let me know what do you think I can expect. Let me know if you want to take me somewhere. I would be interested in hearing about it. Let me know in what way you're connected to Utah, and I'll be interested in hearing from you in the comments area. Thanks as always for watching, and make sure to be part of JB's Man Cave. Subscribe, share with your friends, contribute if you can. It goes a lot towards my expenses. Thanks so much.